Well, in the last video, I showed the motor, the 410 motor that goes with this older 101. I mean, it's not early enough to have the front crank or anything like that, but it's probably sometime late 27, early 28, old enough to have the 410 motor, not the Model 59 motor, no auto brake, all of that. And the last video, I did show that I had replaced the spring in it. And I had to replace the friction leather also, and I'll go into the challenges of that in a moment. Because the friction leather, the leather was deteriorating bad enough that it wouldn't keep speed, so it had to come out. Anyway, I did replace the spring. One of these. This spring is for the Model 59 motor and the 102s. It's probably about 1.5 feet longer than it should be. I forget the exact length between the two of them. There's 3 different sizes, but anyway, this is probably about 1.5 feet shorter than the one that should be in this smaller spring barrel that the 410 uses. Now, that's not ideal. You are squeezing it in there. It makes it a little harder to get into the barrel because it is smaller. It's taking up a lot of room in there. It's not going to unwind as well as it should. You're not going to get the full use out of the spring, but it will get the machine functional. Just thing to remember is just to crank it up each time you play a record. Otherwise, halfway through the second record, it's going to start to lose some power, or seem to anyway. Reason I did this, well, we live in a time of war and pestilence that is causing delays and shortages. My supplier had the longer 102 and Model 59 ones in stock, not the shorter ones, so I had to take what I could get. It's what you got to do sometimes in times like this. You take what you can get and you make it work. Now, there's options. I could have shortened this, cut some spring off of there, and then re-drilled the hole further down. But I didn't want to do that because I have a lot more Model 59 motors and 102s than I do these older. I think I only have 4 of these that have a 410 style motor, 2 front cranks and a couple of these. And this is the only one that needed a spring. And I can wait for the shorter spring to come available eventually. I don't need it today. You know, this will get me going. This will get the machine going. This machine is not a for sale machine. I'm not listing this for sale. This is mine. I like it because it has that nice brass plaque on there. It looks cool. Anyway, so I put the 102 spring in there, and it's good for now. Gets it playing. And I had to replace the friction leather. It's one of these. And you can get these from phonograph parts suppliers, but I'll tell you a little secret. What this really is snips off of a belt for a Singer sewing machine. You can go to eBay and buy a big long belt of that material, a few feet of it anyway, for Singer sewing machines, and you could snip off the sizes you need. This is the friction leather, exactly correct size you need for the friction leathers and for the brake leather. And yes, if your 102 or whatever has a felt pad for friction leather, this will replace it. So, you know, basically for a collector such as me, one belt is a lifetime supply because you don't really replace those all the time, only when it's necessary. So I had to replace that. And on a machine like this, not so much on the more powerful motors, but on a machine like this, there is a break-in period for the new friction leather. Because as careful as I am with the razor blades, everything else, it's not quite perfectly flat on the disc of the governor when it spins. It's going to have a few high spots or whatever, and there is a break-in period. So you set your speed to 78 initially. You played, I don't know, 10, 12 records, then you check it. You'll find that the speed's a little bit off because it's worn in. It's like a pair of shoes, like a pair of leather shoes. You got to break them in, and you got to break in that friction leather. Oil the heck out of it. These are real easy motors to get to. 4 screws, comes right up. Shoot some oil on there, put it back, play some more records, and just check it periodically for the first 50 or 60 plays or so, just to make sure everything's good. And eventually it'll settle out where you want it to be. And I had to do it on this one. Where's the old one? I had the old friction leather here. There it is. There it is. See if you can see that. This is absolutely crumbled. That's really not good. It hadn't been oiled enough in the past, and it just totally disintegrated when I started using it. So I said, okay. I mean, I did try. I did try to keep it on there, but I just had to replace it because the speed was wandering all over the place. So that's no good. That, and I also found that somebody had misadjusted the initially. Because I bought this machine from another collector. It had already been gone through. I knew it had a weak spring. He knew it had a weak spring. That's okay. I didn't realize that he had played around with the bearings on that governor since I didn't have to clean it, I didn't take it out. But once I did, to replace that friction, I realized that it was that he hadn't quite put the bearing caps in correctly. One bearing cap on all of these motors and Victor motors, there's a groove in it. There's a groove in one of the bearing caps. That one goes onto the end of the shaft that's nearest the brass gear. Nearest the brass gear. And the other one that's adjustable, there's no groove in it. Let me see if I find one. I'll show you what I'm talking about with that groove. See, no, I thought I had some. I do. See that groove? This one goes closest on the side of the shaft, closest to the brass gear in whatever motor it's in. And the other one has no groove in it because it's made to be adjustable. So you can adjust the lash on your governor. That one goes on this side that's closest to the friction leather and the spinning brass disc. Well, he didn't quite have the groove where it should have been. He was trying to adjust it on the groove side. That you can't do that. You set that and forget it. The set screw goes into that groove, holds that bearing cap in one position, and you don't touch it again. The other side is where you adjust in and out, and then you lock it in when you have it where you want it. So I had to fix that too. But anyway, I got those things taken care of. I've already played probably 20 records on this, letting the friction leather break in a little bit. And here we go, the other thing. Oh my goodness, you're playing a Columbia Red Label on an acoustic machine with that heavy reproducer. I know. I hear that said many times. For the couple of times I'm going to play this record on this machine, it's fine. You're not going to wear it out. Use a good needle, a brand new needle like you would any other record. It's going to be fine. And besides which, when I play these records on a machine like this, there's usually some reason, something that's wrong with them. This one has an impact crush on the side. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for this. And the other thing is, this machine was very expensive for the average person when it was bought in 1927 or early 28 or whenever. They didn't come to like 1935 when they changed the composition of these records from the old formula. They didn't just throw them out onto the dump and say, okay, that's it, we can't use those anymore. We got new type of record now. No, they kept on using them through the 1930s, the 40s, into the 50s, maybe even the 60s. Who knows? Because these were expensive machines, and the way they're built, they're intended to last like 5 lifetimes. So no one's just going to pitch them. So, go ahead. If you got some 40s records, play them, but just don't do it excessively. Don't play it 200 times. You will eventually start to wear them because there's no grit in these records that it was intended to wear those needles. So the needle will eventually wear that record out. But for the few times you're going to play it, if you want to play it on a machine like this, it's not going to kill him. It's not going to kill the machine. It's not going to kill the records. So go ahead. Most of the records I play are pretty worn anyway. And the reproducer I'm using, this is number 4. This actually belongs on an Electrola. This is an all brass German Electrola reproducer. I don't know if you can see it on there. I'm just borrowing it for this because I haven't yet rebuilt the all brass number 4 that belongs on here. Same reproducer, only the lettering is different on the back. And this one's already been rebuilt. I rebuilt this one experimenting with some rubber tubing I found that is almost the right color. It's in the pinkish red family. Should be more red than that, but it's what I could find. And I like the results. Only problem is I don't know where the tubing came from. Just something I happen to have from some other project. Somewhere else, it's nice and pliable and soft, and it actually fits in there pretty well. Better than exhibition. It's a little bit smaller than exhibition tubing. And it's been actually pretty good. So I'm going to keep it in there, and I might rebuild the other one using what's left of the stuff I have. See, that's the problem with experimenting with materials when you don't really know where they came from originally, because then you can't get more of it. But I'll be working on that, because I got a lot of HMV reproducers I want to rebuild for other machines. This is the 101. Oh, I showed that in the last video. There's the sticker. And we went over the spring. We went over the friction leather. And what else did this machine need? That was pretty much it. Like I said, I got this from another collector some years ago, actually. It's just been sitting waiting for me to get to it. Because the weak spring would lose power 3/4 of the way through record, and I showed the weak spring in the last video. And it just, too irritating to play it. And I have other 101s I could play, and Electrola 101s too. So I didn't need to bother with it just then, but I finally resupplied on springs, and I had no choice but to buy that 102 spring to put in there. And eventually I will get the shorter spring, and I will swap it out you know, for the one that's in here, and that's for this spring that's in here will be in a 102 somewhere eventually, who knows when. I just hate to cut springs down when I know I'm going to need it for something else that would require it to be longer. So I'll just wait. It's not a rush. It plays beautifully. At least one play, you know, per crank, and that's okay because this is not for a customer. It's for me. So I can play with this one, you know. Otherwise, I wouldn't, you know, be so cavalier about stuff like that. I would try to do it right. And not that that longer spring is really going to hurt anything for the time that it's in there, so that's okay. And like I did go over, you know, you check every now and then. There's your stroboscope disc. Every now and then, when you're breaking that new friction leather in, throw that on there and make sure it hasn't moved. And if it has, you adjust it. I know it's a pain in the neck on these because you got to pull the turntable, and there's the two little screws at the end of this little sliding thing there that you adjust your speed with, and you take a while to get it right. It's not something that takes 30 seconds unless you get really lucky. And there you go. In the next video, I will play some records on here, and we'll see how it sounds.